What's going on, ladies and gents? Perfect Beat here, back at you once again, and this is my first ever build guide for Mass Effect Andromeda. Actually, it's my first build guide ever, period. I don't think I ever did any for Mass Effect 3. Anyways, in this video, we're going to be looking at the Human Adept, and as you can see here, I went with a max power build, and I think I'm going to call this one the Do You Even Lift, Brah? Because we're going to be debuffing the enemies by lifting them with our Biotics. By the way, I'm no expert in anything like that. This is just the way I like to build this character. I'm not saying that this is the end-all be-all build. This is what works well for me, and it may or may not work well for you. So please keep that in mind. Okay, let's get right into it, shall we? Okay, so the first skill we have up is Pull. This is a very entertaining skill. It's one of my favorites. And let's go ahead and take a look at the first evolution tree at rank 4. We have either Duration or Radius. Now, since Pull only works on red bar enemies, you don't really need that extra duration because they're pretty easy to kill. If you can't kill them in the default with the default duration, then you're doing something wrong. So I highly recommend Radius because now you can pull up to 2 targets in a 4-meter radius, which is nice because if your target's behind cover, you have a chance of pulling them out of it as well. So yeah, go with Radius. Next up at rank 5 we have Crushing Grip and Exposed. Now since I'm mainly playing on gold, Crushing Grip is kind of a joke. Doesn't really do that much damage and it's just meh. So I went with Exposed instead, which is really nice, and this works really well on gold as well, because an affected enemy now take 30% more damage from all sources. That includes your teammates, so this will make shredding those red bar enemies that much faster. So yeah, go with Exposed. And finally at rank 6 for Pull we have Biotic Drain and Anti-Shields. Now, Biotic Drain works well in Bronze and Silver. However, on Gold, it's really not that effective. So, I went with Anti-Shields instead, because having the ability to do with shielded enemies is really nice, because there are a lot of enemies that have shields, namely Sharpshooters and Observers. So, being able to strip away their shields is it's a pretty good addition. So, yeah, go with Shield. And next up, we have is Singularity. This is our bread and butter skill. This is what makes the Human Adept unique, and it's currently one of my favorite skills. So enemies with shields and armor obviously won't get picked up by Singularity itself. However, if they're passing through it, they will take damage and get debuffed at the same time with our offensive Biotics. But we'll get into that later. For now, let's take a look at Singularity. Okay, so for our first evolution for Singularity at rank 4, we have either Duration or Radius. Since the default duration is already pretty good, I opted for Radius, because I want to have my debuff field just to be a little bit bigger. So yeah, and I think it affects more enemies as well if it's bigger. That's what she said. For rank 5, we have either Recharge Speed or Anti-Shield. Since I already spec Pull for Anti-Shield, we don't really need 2 skills that deals with shields. One should suffice. So I went with Recharge Speed for this one. That way we could kind of spam Singularity a bit more often, because the default cooldown is pretty long, and shortening that really helps. And last but not least, at rank 6 we have either Expanding Singularity or Exploding Singularity. So the way I'm going to be playing this is I'm going to use my powers to debuff enemies. I'm not going to use my powers as a main source of damage. So Exploding Singularity is really not going to be that much useful. So I went with Expanding instead. That way, my field is a lot larger and I could deal with more dudes. Now, the final ability we have in our arsenal is Shockwave. Now, initially for me, the Shockwave, I was kind of like, this ability is kind of poop. But once I got it to rank 6, you know what? I was like, man, this is actually pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, shall we? Now, for our first evolution at rank 4, we have Damage and Force or Radius. Since this skill pretty much goes wherever you point, if you're pretty accurate, you don't really need Radius. So I went with Damage and Force just to give it a little extra punch, because, it needs it. Now, for rank 5, this one's kind of a toss-up, or a personal preference, if you will. We have either Recharge Speed or Reach. Now, since I like to hang back and debuff enemy at a distance, I went with Reach. That way I can touch him with my Shockwave. But if you're more of a in-your-face type of player, I would go with Recharge Speed instead. So, this one's more of a playstyle preference. Now, for the last evolution at rank 6, we have either Lifting Shockwave or Anti-Armor. Now, Anti-Armor sounds good on paper, 50% extra damage against armor. But the base damage for Shockwave is kind of ass. So 50% extra damage of ass is still ass. So I would highly recommend lifting Shockwave, because now, not only can you detonate enemies, you can also prime them. And while they're being lifted by Shockwave, they're also going to get debuffed by your offensive Biotics. So this one is kind of a no-brainer for me. So go with lifting Shockwave, dude. Now, last but certainly not least, let's take a look at offensive Biotic. And this is what makes this build works. This is what makes this character such a great supporting character. So, for our first evolution at rank 4, we have either Power Enhancement or Power Efficiency. Now, since we're not going to be using our powers as a main source of damage, I went with Power Efficiency. That way we can debuff enemies more often with our shorter recharge time. For rank 5, we have either Exposure or Combo Detonation. Now, I love combo detonating in Mass Effect 3. They feel and sound great. However, in this game, they are just they feel very underwhelming, and they do very little damage. BioWare is aware of this. They say they will, balance it in the next patch, perhaps. We'll see. So I went with Exposure instead, and that's what started this build, actually. So here, check this out. Affecting enemies with Biotics now cause them to take increased damage from all sources by 20%. So that means any enemies, whether they're shielded or armored, when they walk into your Singularity, even though they're not getting thrown around, they are still being affected by it. So they'll still take damage over time and get debuffed. And then any red bar enemy affected by Shockwave and Pull will also take extra damage on top of the debuff that these two, skills already provide. So this is what makes this fucking class amazing, in my opinion. And finally, for rank 6, we have either Biotic Warrior or Biotic Expert. And once again, since I'm not using my power as a source of damage, I went with Biotic Warriors. That way, every time I debuff them with my powers, I do more damage with my weapon and melee for 3 seconds. So, giggity. And then we throw 1 point in barrier because we have an extra points. Why not? Now, as for the consumables, this is all personal preference at this point, really. I like to run Power Efficiency mod. That way, my power recharges a little faster because I like spamming my powers. And then I run Pistol Rail Lamp because I like to run pistols. And as for the weapons, again, personal preference. I mainly like to use the pistols because they are light. However, you could pretty much use whatever you want as long as you get your power recharge speed at 100%. That's the most important part. If you could do that, you could pretty much use whatever you want, dude. Okay, and that about does it for this build guide. I am recording this audio post-editing, so it may not sync up with the video too well. So if you see little glitches here and there, that's the reason. But this is, like I said, this is my first build guide. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. You try it out, have some fun. Let me know if you like it or not. If you have any suggestions or requests, leave them in the comments below. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, if you have another character you would like me to do, just let me know. And I'm going to kick it over to some gameplay so you can see this build in action. And as always, until next time, you guys take care, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
We need to secure this position. Enemies on the move. Be ready.
Boots on the ground! Watch out!
Enemies headed your way.
Go! Watch your head! Shields are wrecked!
Teammate injured.
Thank you!
Squad member down.
Up you go! Watch your head! Shields are wrecked!
Teammate injured.
Shields down!
Three left. Go get him. Teammate injured. The enemy's tapping into civilian comm traffic. We need to take out their uplink devices.
Very well. Use the shields.
Enemy tech shut down.
Destroyer!
One problem gone.
You
Almost
go!
done. Enemy tech is deactivated. Objective complete.
You go! Destroyer!
Three more to go. Enemy's cleared. Stay alert.
Excellent!
Hostiles en route.
Clear out!
Three more to go. All clear for now.
About time.
Enemies incoming.
Clear out!
Squad member down.
Fine, fine.
Teammate injured. Teammate injured.
Careful!
Teammate injured.
Fine, fine. Thanks for having my back.
I'm reading a flatline.
I must.
I'm reading a flatline.
Fine, fine. Snap out of it!
Squad member down.
If I must. Snap out of it!
Three left. Go get him.
Shields down! One left.
All clear for now. We've got major enemy targets nearby. Let's take them out.
If you insist. Kill the destroyer!
Squad member
Shields
down.
erect! Watch your head! Snap out of it!
flatline. I'm reading a flatline.
All right, I'm coming.
Scratch one target. Teammate injured. I'm reading a flatline. Squad member down. I'm reading a flatline. Almost done. Teammate injured.
Fine.
Teammate injured.
Fine.
No enemy targets left in play. Three more to go.
Lock shield.
Reload. We're tracking reinforcements.
About time.
Shuttle incoming. Get to the extraction zone. I'm reading a flatline. Squad member down. I'm reading a flatline.
If I must,